we have resilience. And resilience, when used correctly, or adversities, when used correctly to build resilience, then it's a superpower. And we always talk about superpowers, right? And so then it's a process, but then you say, I have to use this for good. And so to me, adapting very quickly to the American culture, just my sense of curiosity. So we just happened to build cabinet components, but really, I feel like now our mission as a family, as a company, and as people has turned into, how do we help? How do we use our resources, our voices, our limited power to help someone who really maybe isn't there? And how do we do good with it, right?
This week on Brewing Business with Brady, we're thrilled to welcome Julia, an inspiring entrepreneur who transformed her journey from immigrant beginnings into a thriving business. As the owner and CEO of Doormasters Houston, Houston's leading custom cabinet door manufacturer, Julia combines a chemist's precision with a visionary approach to create quality and innovation in every product. And before we dive in, you can find us on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Don't forget to rate us on your favorite platform. It really helps us grow and invite more incredible guests to share their insights in our podcast. And you need to listen until the very end. We actually drop in a giveaway contest. We drop in something that you can do to earn one of our Brady CFO coffee mugs. Thanks, y'all. Let's get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Brewing Business with Brady. Today's guest is Julia Lopez, the CEO of Doormasters Houston, and we are really excited to have her on the show today. Julia, welcome.
Good morning, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. I am really excited to talk to you guys about our business.
It's the morning time. What's in your mug today? What's the way that you start each morning?
Well, today's a special day. It's November 1st. We're recording on November 1st. And today is almost the last day of the celebration of Dia de Muertos. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but Day of the Dead, it's actually a series of days where we welcome our loved ones that we remembered. So today is a special one. I'm actually have it in my Talavera mug, and I'm drinking café de olla. So café de olla, if you're not familiar with it, is actually brewed on a clay pot. It's ground coffee with cinnamon, and some people put clove or orange peels or lemon peels. And so I thought it was a great day to go a little bit fancy with our coffee because it's special. So yeah, that's what I'm having this morning.
Awesome. That does sound delicious. You're gonna have to make me a recipe of one of those. That I remember one point in time I went to the Dominican Republic, and the way they drink their coffee is pure espresso format. Like they don't sit there and drink a regular mug of coffee. It's always espresso, but they just douse it with a ton of cinnamon. And so it's less about like, you don't taste the caffeine as much, although it's heavily caffeinated. Like you just taste a pure douse of sugar. And, but the cinnamon, the coffee in there sounds good to me. So at some point in time, we're gonna have to try that.
Yeah, one thing that original café de olla has is piloncillo. It's cane sugar that's kind of in that's actually like a little triangle. For health purposes, we've omitted that. But yes, I totally get it.
That is a great drink to start off a Friday morning. It sounds like too. So, what I'm excited about, Julia, that obviously my wife is from Chile, and we talked about this when we first met and had coffee. That I'm really excited for you to interweave some of your Latin heritage and your customs and your culture, and telling us a bit about how that's influenced your business today and your family. So you've kind of given us a bit of flavor of that already. So I'm really excited about that. All right. So let's kick it off here. One of my first questions, Julia, that I'm really interested to understand with you is, you have faced, and your family has faced some challenges that, you were immigrant to this country, you were a woman in a very male-dominated field. And so actually, before we dive into this in a big way, tell us a little bit more about your business, Doormasters of Houston. Tell us what you're doing today, a little bit about the origin story. So that way we can really understand your personal story a little bit better. So Tell us about the business.
Absolutely. So, at its core, we are a cabinet component manufacturer. So think about everything but the box, right? So cabinet doors, drawer fronts, drawer boxes, and now we're actually introducing face frame. We're working on introducing frame fabrication. So for those people that are not in our industry, there is a perception that everything is made at the same place, but there's cutting rectangles, and there's also sanding and profiling and tooling that it's very cumbersome for a cabinet shop to do on their own when it comes to solid wood component manufacturing. So that's where we found our niche. And in the beginning, we started with doors and drawer fronts because back in the 90s, the cabinets were red oak and stained, and so things have been evolving very quickly throughout the years. And so we have found our niche there. I think a lot of people ask us, well, why don't you just make the box? We think that we are better positioned to help a cabinet shop be more with our capabilities. And it's a really nice blend because you're not competing with a cabinet shop. You're enabling them to do more with less. And so that is a beautiful way to show it, right? So we're helping people, or helping cabinet shops in whatever little or big way you want to call it.
That was a great little background upon Doormasters of Houston. And so when we first chatted, Julia, you've given us some background in regards to your Latin culture, your Latin background, and and that you told me the story of how your family immigrated to this country, and that you also, what you just described is a male dominated field, woodworking trades, et cetera. In terms of ownership, especially in that field, and leadership in that field, it is still a very male dominated field. And so would love to understand, especially those challenges that you've faced, and how you've become the CEO of Doormaster of Houston. I'd love for you to elaborate a bit on that and how you overcame that, and what kind of resiliency that has created for you in helping helping Doormasters of Houston be what it is today.
Absolutely. I think it's been a long way of not only discovering that adversities can be advantages, and it's the growth of my company, but my family and myself, and how all of those things intertwine. So I'll give you a little bit of background story without going all the way back. But our family immigrated to the United States, I believe it was 1997, after the economic recession, the devaluation of the Mexican peso. But what's really interesting is that my father, although he didn't finish, I don't think he finished middle school. He was driven by necessity to be resourceful, and that's where we all get it from, right? Because he needed to make sure that his family was okay. So his brothers and his parents, and he also was raised in a very machista culture, right? We talk all the time. Actually, my sister and I were on a plane yesterday, and as we're waiting to board, we said, it's incredible to look back and see how much change has happened within just a few years. Thinking from the time where women weren't even allowed to go to school, women were homemakers and they were raising children, they're all very vital roles. But to now her and I leading the charge in this really big thing that we are doing. But it was necessity that drove all those changes. So we came to the United States in 1997. I was fortunate enough to be born here, and I was actually raised over there. So the family that I refer to all the time, they're actually my aunt and uncle, my biological aunt and uncle, but they've raised me since I was a baby. So I have a very unique perspective, and therefore a lot of privilege that I'm aware of. Because I even though I went through that whole process, my citizenship has been that of the U.S. So even though I've seen it, I went through the process. I never actually lived it. I never had to have fear of a visa or all of that stuff that immigrants have to go through. It's a very long and complicated process. And I have learned so much from my father, and I have learned so much from my family. So um, when you ask me what has brought me to this role, well, I was very young when we came to the United States. Spanish is my first language, but I was very young, and so I was better able to adapt to the culture. So before we started this podcast, I told you, please refer to me as Julia Lopez, because when we come into this country, we are so focused into blending in. We have to blend in. We have to learn the language. We have to adapt. And in the process, some of our roots and who we are is lost. So I remember going to school and saying, "Oh, I'm Julia Lopez." But my name actually,
It sounds like a really gringo accent. Julia Lopez.
Julia Lopez, and I do it all the time. I do it all the time. I catch myself, and I told you, look, I'm working on this because I'm not Julia Lopez. I'm Julia Lopez. It's actually my great grandmother's last name, or it was actually her name. It was Julia Lopez, and I think that it would be a dishonor to her if I was Julia Lopez. I'm Julia Lopez, and it's it's in going back to your question, it's finding our identity, who we are as people, as businesses, as a family. And when you take all those adversities into consideration, you realize that we have immigrants and people who were not raised in the optimal, environment. We have resilience, and resilience, when used correctly, or adversities when used correctly to build resilience, then it's a superpower. And we always talk about superpowers, right? And 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 so then it's a process, but then you say, I have to use this for good. And so to me, adapting very quickly to the American culture, just my sense of curiosity, and just I'm a little bit hard-headed in that I don't take no for an answer. I say, but why? But why? Why is the sky blue? I've always been curious. And so that actually has been, what was, I'm sure, a nuisance to my parents when I was growing up, that actually was turned into something positive. Well, let's question it. So yeah, so we just happened to build cabinet components, but really I feel like now our mission as a family, as a company, and as people has turned into, how do we help? How do we use our resources, our voices, our limited power to help someone who really maybe isn't there? And how do we do good with it, right?
I'd love for you to elaborate a bit more on that, in your business, obviously there has to be sustainability, right? That you have to produce a good product, produce a good service, and sell that to the marketplace. But obviously, I tell people all the time, it's like your employees and your team members, you spend more time with them oftentimes than your own family, right? And so the impact that you can have in your little subculture of your work environment is so critical. And I don't think that we should minimize that is an opportunity to do really good things in your world, because that's your little world that you have, right? And that's where you have a ton of influence as a business owner, as a CEO. People are looking up to you as a leader of the company. And I'm really interested to understand that, yeah, and taking into account some of that resiliency that you've developed and where you're at today, how are you building specifically into your business the ability to help others and overcome their own personal challenges that you said that, yeah, you want your business to be much more? What is that tangibly looking like today?
So it starts with me first, right? So it starts with putting my pride aside and saying, you know what? I don't know it all. I don't intend to pretend that I know it all, and having an open mind and a willingness to listen, right? And then that carries over into our company culture. I think a lot of times as Latinos, we are taught that we have to micromanage, and then it has to be toxic, and that I have to be breathing on someone's back. Well, what if I just empower them and say, look, this is the way we do things. try it out, but I'm not in your shoes every single day. So if you have an idea, let's try it out. Right. Just, and I think it all started also with a transition when, my dad and my brother were always running the shop. My sister and I were running outside sales in the office. And when it came, that was our domain. And so we did have a little bit of issues when it started bleeding into the shop, because we said, look, we can only do so much here. We need to make sure that all of this comes together. And so then when we started stepping into the turf, I mean, we had some moments where we said, oh my God, this is not going to work because we cannot agree. And so when we told each other, look, this is not going to work, if we cannot be amicable about this process of change. And we took a big long breath and we cried and we put our egos aside and we kind of just, sat in each other's chairs, and we understood, okay, there's pride involved in this. There's fear involved in this. Let me look at things the way that you look at them. And we become more empathetic about their position, right? And without getting too political, I want to express that sometimes it's impossible for us to see the other person's perspective without being in their shoes first.
Yes.
Right. And that's all I'm going to say about that. But not only in politics, but in family dynamics and businesses, but it's a hard thing to do, because sometimes, we, when we do that, we see things differently, and that may hurt our pride or the thing that we've been doing for so long. I've had several moments in this business and in my life where you said, oh my God, I worked so hard to build this thing. And it was years of my life, and it was tireless nights, and now I have to start all over. And I think that's one of those big things that we have to contend with. So when you ask me, where do we start? How do we do it? Well, we start with ourselves, and we listen, and maybe part of that is understanding that we will never really know, and that's okay. But let's just work together to make that. Then we create that trust with our employees, right? Trust is everything in our culture. And that's why, I can't change the country. I can't change the world immediately, but I can change myself. I can change the culture that my employees walk into every morning, and how my door is always open and we're always listening. And maybe I'll go and I'll work with them for a few days, and I'll see, oh my goodness, you're having to do all of that. What can I do to help you not have to work so hard? And when you get home at the end of the day, you still have that mental capacity to be a positive human being with your family, because at the end of the day, that's why we do all this, right? We do it for our family. We do it to uh be better. We're always trying to make the next generation better. And so how do I also help for that? So for example, we started running 410s in our shop. And so that allows, I remember when we came into the United States, my father was working all the time. My mom didn't drive. And so I was in choir because that's what we could afford. I couldn't do that. That was my adult crisis, because I always wanted to play a stringed instrument, but realistically, we couldn't afford the rental, much less the purchase of the instrument. So, but my parents could never make it. There was days where I was the last person to be picked up, and I don't hold it against them. That was just the circumstances. They had to make sure that we had clothes and food and a roof over our heads. So what if I, in a lot of ways, can make that difference, so that my employees make it home on time and they can be there, and this next generation of children have parents who are there, and that's how we make a difference, right? We start looking at these kids and how we have power over what goes on, at least with their parents, when we have them with us and we're responsible for them. In a wood shop, I'm responsible for making sure that these parents come back home with all 10 digits, because That is a very real thing in our industry. You run a table saw and, accidents happen. So what can I do to make sure that these kids can still play baseball with their dad or football? And so it's those things. And when you realize all of those things, you said, oh my goodness, I had more power than I ever imagined. But we have to rethink everything, and it starts with that. And so now my employees, if they so choose to, can either run errands on Friday and spend the weekends with their family or go have lunch with their kids. I don't remember a time that my dad could have had lunch with me. So I mean, or just rest and be better, right? So
Yeah. I that model of 410 seems pretty innovative within your industry. Do you agree?
absolutely. So when you take into account just startup and shut down, and although within a day it might not seem much, it's like compound interest, right? So think about all of the time that we gain in actual production time, doing that. Now it's a little bit, tricky because we're always, I mean, I'm used to working like a mad person, but I don't want to do that to my employees. It's also respecting, right? Okay. So, in understanding, okay, if you're working more, then your capacity and your production actually decreases.
Yep.
It's not about having all that overtime. And then it's also making sure that we are profitable enough to where our employees don't have to work overtime to make ends meet, right? Because we'll push ourselves to make it happen for our families. And so it's a lot of moving parts, but that's my job. And my job is taking care of my people. Yes, it's taking care of my customers, but we also take care of our customers by taking care of our people, because that does have a direct impact on the end finished product, and it does have a direct impact in our communities. And this has to be bigger than ourselves. And I like to think that I'm contributing to that.
I love, you approach things with a very creative mindset. You're inquisitive, you're poking at things. Um, at the same time, you have this family, success story of your family coming in as immigrants to this country, working hard, starting a business, passing that to the next generation, which you're in right now. And I mean, in essence, that's the American dream, right? And there's wonderful aspects to that. How are you helping, your employees or the people that you see to also try to capture that dream? When we had coffee the other day, you were talking about wanting to empower some of your team members or people in the industry to lead and to excel and advance themselves. And so what does that look like for you? How are you doing that?
I think a lot of times in life we try to take on too much, right? We say, oh, well, why pay for that if I can do it myself? Why pay for that when I can do it myself? And then we take on so much. I mean, at least it happens with me with my ADHD, and I talk about this all the time because it's very real for me. Um, we cannot do it all, right? And so let's find that thing that we are really good at. And I say, oh, well, so what are you passionate about? And a lot of times, even with business owners at trade shows, I say, well, close your eyes and think about the thing that you love so much that when you think about it, that maybe it's the thing that brought you to the industry. Maybe it's the thing that made you want to open up a business. Think about, and it doesn't need to be directly related to the industry. It's just what drove you to this, right? And what are your goals? And think about all of the things that you've come to accept to be part of the package that you feel that you have to do, but that you absolutely abhor.
Yeah.
All right. And so just think about the fact that there should be someone out there that loves the thing that you abhor. So then in collaboration, we find power and the ability to do so much more than we ever dreamed of. So sure, could I plant the seed and water it and watch the tree grow and then grab a saw and cut it down, mill it down, dry it out, then rip it down? And sure, but there's mills for that. So can I versus should I? And so I have found that, for example, most business owners are doing their own accounting.
Yeah.
Most business owners are, because they say, oh, I cannot afford a full-time bookkeeper. Well, you said, but you're a small business. Why should you have a full-time bookkeeper? right? And so, what if you found someone, and sometimes it's not, okay, so this is the problem. So finding the problem is half the problem. And then it's not maybe what, it's who can help you find a solution. So same thing with my employees and the people that I work with. I want to be a solution, and maybe growing my network, and in growing my network, I can maybe not have the solution myself, but have someone that helps. And so if I, talk to my employees, hey, what are you struggling with? Right? So one of the things that I like to do in my shop is say, okay, you're really good at that thing. Let's look at the thing. So just in terms of just operating machinery or processes, to say, okay, you're really good at that. So let's put you over here. Let's find that weakness, that thing. Are you afraid of the machine? Is it big and scary? Okay, let's tackle that, right? And then let's get you comfortable with that. And then, because that way we're empowering each other. Let's overcome the fears together. Let's just tackle that head on and make you so much better. I mean, but it's in empowering employees and the people that I come across, and telling them, you don't have to do it alone. I'm here. I will hold your hand through this process, and we will be better afterwards. Right? It's just overcoming that little learning curve. So when we went to the opening of the new Statesville campus for Wine and Cold Serve, we wanted to be there because, as opposed to what a lot of people might think, that we've been doing this for such a long time and therefore we are just stupid profitable and we are killing it. The reality is that we just started a few months ago when we incorporated those machines and the processes and integration and all of the things that came with that into our shop. So those machines were commissioned in January. And had those machines not come into our lives and we were able to incorporate them if quickly enough and efficiently enough, we wouldn't have been here. But the power of collaboration is huge, in that you don't have to do it alone. You find someone who has found the problem and built a solution. And so then we just find the companies or the people that have found the solution, but it starts with communication, right? And so, like I said, as opposed to us trying to do it all ourselves, this company in a lot of ways has changed our lives. So I wanted to record some content with them to talk to other business owners and not give them a sales pitch. Just tell them, look, there are solutions to your problems, and it's not more hands, and it's not throwing more money at it, right? Because you're doing the same thing over and over again, and that is just going to give you the same results. Well, what happens when the money dries out, right? Because we've been doing the same thing. So there are companies that are also like-minded, and they're also resourceful in their own way, that have really talented people doing their own thing. And so then we just partner up with those people and come up with solutions to our problems. And so, yeah, this change in our lives just happened about 8 months ago, if that. So it's been it's been decades. And so I want to help people not have to spend decades finding themselves and trying and thinking that they're alone on an island. There's people that are really willing to help.
Got it. I'm interested though, I even face this a bit as a business owner, right? Because you've talked a lot about, especially with your employees, with your workforce, even within your company, you've made a decision to focus on your strengths, right? That it actually, and hearing you talk, that it permeates throughout how you lead, Julia, and it permeates through your business design as well, that you've decided to focus on your strengths and seeking outside partnerships for where you may be weak. And you're building that into your employees, into how they operate and how they function and work with other team members. The biggest thing that I think, can be difficult to overcome is wanting to do the things that you may not be excellent at because you trust yourself or your company to be the best to get it done, right? That, and sometimes in partnering with others, there's the risk of will they perform like I would perform? Will they do it as good as I will do it? Will they do it with as much passion and focus on the customer as I will do it? And I think that's a battle that most entrepreneurs or leaders of businesses face on a regular basis. That I was watching Shark Tank last night, right? And one of the guys said that, yeah, nobody will be as passionate as the founders ever. And so in forming those partnerships, how do you go about navigating that, yeah, you want to have trust, you want to make sure that, you ultimately serve the customer well and that your employees are treated well, that it's a good experience for the entire ecosystem of your business. How do you go about doing that?
Ooh, that's a deep one, right? Because I mean, when you're talking about this, I even think about the way that I've always operated, even at home. So I always took on everything myself because, no one could clean the kitchen as well as I could. And so my husband just said, oh, well, I'm never going to live up to your expectations. So I'm not even going to try.
Yeah.
And right. So that, like I said, it all starts in our personal life. And then you said, you know what, honey, it's fine. Thank you so much. And then you approach it in a different way and hopefully it gets better. So a lot of it, yeah, it's letting go of that control because otherwise we will just kill ourselves. But it's also communicating, right? So, hey, look, what if we try it this way? And just collaborating and finding people that are going to listen. But it's finding a way to communicate efficiently and in a way that it's not arrogant or offensive, doing it with, being tactful in the way that we approach communication. It's interesting that you say that no one will be as passionate as the founder. So that's very true. So, although my father didn't found this specific company, he did start another one. And we just kind of wanted to do things different and we branched off from that one. But, the intention there was just, let's build something so that we don't have to be someone's employee. And while that still holds true here, it's okay. How do we inspire and empower future generations to keep this going? And it's also understanding that technology, people, even the world itself changes.
Yep.
So we have to we have to put our pride aside and just be lifelong learners and embrace change. And so understanding that maybe our children will be passionate about the business if we empower them to be, let's say, for example, my son really likes, some sort of engineering. Well, how can we tie that into this, right? So how can we find something of what you really like that can connect with this thing that we're doing? And if not, then, you can go and seek your own way. But in the process, maybe we create processes that are automated so that this business can run. If I'm no longer here tomorrow and nobody wants to take it over, well, then it has value and it can be sold, right? So it's just, and that includes putting our pride aside too, because we want this business to keep going, right, for generations. But let's get real. Things are changing so quickly that maybe in a few decades, this is not even going to be a thing. And it's coming to terms with the fact that things change, the world changes, and we have to be okay with change.
You bring a unique insight, and even as we're talking here, like I know I showed you this book, but I just think about it. Actually, it's the complementary book to the book I mentioned to you previously, the Predictable Success book. But it's really interesting because you have some leadership profiles from this book called The Synergist of you are the synergist, it sounds like, in your company where, you're bringing and trying to bring everybody's unique strengths. And at the same time, it sounds very much so like you're a visionary in your business, but you're trying to hone in on, you as a person can try to help everybody operate in their best strengths and to get along and to make sure that everything's functioning well. And I am interested to understand, what you just talked about there, because you want to empower people to do well in their work, to focus on their strengths. At the same time, you also have to output a product, right? You have to output, a consistent, high quality product so that your business does continue to grow until that, potential transition, whenever that might come, happens, right? And so you have to develop systems inside your business. I'm interested to understand what type of systems are you developing while balancing, hey, people have strengths, we want to honor the people, we want to help them be successful, but how do you balance that with, but at the end of the day, like, we've got to do steps 1 through 10 to get this done for the customer really well by this time frame. What are you doing there?
So, it's a fine balance between leveraging humans and automation and being tactful in a way that they're not fighting against each other, because if we're fighting against a machine, we're never going to win, right? How do we combine the two? So for us, it's been um, eliminating human error wherever we can, right? So unleashing our creativity where it's necessary, but eliminating redundancy and tasks that can be automated. And a lot of that is just transferring data. A lot of what we do is just transferring data from the measurement of a component size, breaking it down into parts, and then sending those parts to the individual machines so that an operator, the way that my system works, thanks to a lot of people, a lot of companies that I've partnered up with throughout the years, is, I could be type measuring something, and, if my customer is good with it, then it's instantly in my machines, and we use the cloud, and we use Cat5 cables and all of those things internally. And so I guess to answer your question is acknowledging that the first thing is acknowledging that we will never be better than a machine, right? And putting our part aside. I always talk about how when we first got our beam saw, so our beam saw basically cuts anything out of a rectangle. So if you have a 4x8 sheet, you could stack it high, and it basically has the ability to label everything. You cut a bunch of parts, and it optimizes the best yield for that sheet of plywood, depending on your trying, or a sheet good depending on what you're trying to do. I can only imagine all of the mental gymnastics you would have to do and how exhausting that would be for a human to try to do, and we couldn't get close to it. So the guy that had been cutting plywood for 15 years, unfortunately, could never adapt to that. And a lot of it is just, because this is the thing I've been doing day in and day out for 15 years.
Yep.
Right? And so, but it's understanding that I also have to make sure that my product is consistent and that my yield, and that I'm as efficient as I can be, and not wasteful in human, in how we use our human hand, right? Because it's movement, it's potential, but it's also thinking, this is a natural resource. I want to make sure that if I'm going to take from a natural resource, that I take as little, and that I make sure that it's a sustainable way of doing things. So this is bigger, right? And we're also, the quality of the way that we cut things, we cannot match it with the old processes. So I guess it's just leveraging those things. So eliminate human error wherever possible. And then almost it's just, saying, okay, so where can we, using human creativity to constantly question, okay, how can we make this better? And then even thinking, what's the next process after this leaves my facility? What's the next process? How can I facilitate the next process? I know it has nothing to do with me, but let's make it better. That's how we stand we stand apart from our competitors, right? Because usually people are only thinking about themselves, and okay, this is what I do, and then the rest is up to you, and like it's out my door. But in thinking about other people, we always we're increasing our value and the quality, and then we work on the relationship. So it's just so quality is not just the quality of the product, is the quality. Let's say that it was apples to apples, it's the same quality, but I have this wonderful relationship with my customer, and I understand them, and I listen to their hardships, and I say, hey, who can I connect you with, right? What are you struggling with? So quality is not just the finished product, it's the quality of our relationships. And at the end of the day, we just do business with people that we trust. And right.
Got it. I really enjoyed this conversation, Julia, of how you brought up, you know, like to everything you just described, that you're using automation in your business. You're using automation to make sure that there's accuracy and efficiency in the output of your product. And the reality that it is a mental gymnastic to do all the measurements and to cut things appropriately, but also there's an element to it of efficiency too, of making sure that you're operating sustainably, not just at one from a natural resource perspective, that you're not creating undue waste that doesn't need to happen as a result of human error, but also, you know, financial waste for your business too, that can operate sustainably and efficiently too. And I think what's really interesting is you've really weaved in some examples in which your care for the people, your care for the environment and sustainable practices has actually, it's combined with tangible business results too. Like the two aren't separate from each other. They go hand in hand with each other, that when you want to give your employees an extra day of the week to go spend time with their families or to engage in whatever they want to do, it's actually created a business output for you of being more efficient in 4-10 shifts, right? You know, in an effort to make sure that you have good quality standardization, it has potentially, you know, moved somebody away a little bit from doing a job that they've done forever, but you have ensured that financially you are, you know, having the best output, the most efficient output, and that you don't have waste in resources too. And so it's just, you've given some really great examples of that I've really enjoyed, that, you know, your care for doing, you know, well and helping your employees and creating this culture of care and service has actually led to actual tangible business results or business, you know, decisions. Because I think that sometimes the conversation, people can talk a lot about caring, and it's like, okay, but yeah, you know, how does that impact the business though? Because if it produces bad results in the business, well, then you don't have something sustainable. Like caring's not sustainable then, right? Like you can't, like, yeah, it sounds fluffy and nice, but if you can't sustainably do it forever and you can't lead a business forward in that, well, then it dies. And then you've just proven against the idea about doing it. And so I've loved that you've given some really prime examples.
Oh yeah. And you know, I think I really want to talk about this. I mean, let's talk about the challenge of deciding to let someone go. Because, you know, I always told my family, oh, I love my people. I can't do anything without my people. They are everything to me and I want to help. But sometimes you have to take care of the rest of the people, right? In allowing, you know, a bad apple to sit there. And it's difficult as a business owner to make that decision, but you have to make that tough call to protect the rest of the people, because if that bad apple spoils the rest of the batch and I no longer have a business, well, then I can't help anymore. And it's a tough one.
You bring up a really good point in just that aspect of, yeah, you want to care for your people, but at the same time, sometimes caring is the best thing that you can do is be hard too, right? That be hard on the players on your team that are not performing, that are not keeping up to par as the rest of your team. And that is the most caring thing that you can actually do, that I think that the world gets lost in that. Yeah, the caring thing is to sweep it under the rug, or, you know, sweep the issue under the rug, or move on, or be graceful. And no, the most caring thing you can do is say, hey, you know, we need you to improve in this area. If you don't, there's not a home for you here, that everybody needs to perform to this standard. We want to create an environment where you can perform at your best, that we're giving you an opportunity of 4 10-hour shifts. There's things that we're offering that other employers don't offer, but we need you to level up to this standard. And if you don't, there's not a home here, right? We need participation, that it's a give and take, that this is a mutual relationship here, right? And so, yeah, you gave some great examples. I'm interested, you know, one final, you know, kind of question I have for you here, Julia. Like, you know, you decided to pivot recently. You've talked about how you brought in some machinery very recently this year. You've pivoted to where you're doing a lot less. You're very focused as a cabinetry parts and components manufacturer. What's next? What are you thinking about over the next 3 to 5 years? What's in your head that especially as you made this change, you implemented it, you're seeing things, you're probably learning things. What's next for the next 3 to 5 years that you're thinking about your business that you need to go tackle or be planning for?
Oh my goodness, it's collaboration. It's collaboration. It's actually, this past week we met with some direct competitors, and it's hearing them out, and like I said, finding who, what could help them out. And you realize that when we see each other as people, there's so much work to be done as an industry. So I guess what's next is I want to continue networking. I want to continue learning. There's so much to learn even within component manufacturing, and almost extending my help to anybody who might need it. And I think that in doing that, I will have so much work with component manufacturing. So I'll grow my own company. There's social projects that I have. I was just talking to some higher ups at Whiting Holzer. They're in Germany, and in Germany they are facing a lot of the labor shortages. They face them a lot sooner than we did. We still haven't seen the effect of a decreasing population, right? And we need to, maybe those people that would come to our trade are not attracted to it because we haven't made it attractive, right? And so they're going elsewhere. So how are we going to prepare for that? I think for us is, like I said, it's just helping, and it's crazy how it's a boomerang effect. When you want to help somebody else or you want to help society, it just comes back at you, and it continues accelerating. So one of the things that I'm so excited about is our collaboration with these companies that are already doing it. So in Germany, for example, they start when these kids are 14, 15 years old, and maybe they're not going for engineering, they're not going into all of these other programs. And so they create apprenticeship programs so that they start building a trade. And so what I was so surprised to find out is that these kids work with the same company from the time they're 14 until they retire. And it blows my mind because you don't see that here. So one of the initiatives that I want to actually just take the opportunity to extend to all of your viewers is let's partner together to see where we can use our resources. My resources are limited, but I have something to give so that we can empower the next generation of trade workers, right? So I'm still paying off some of my student debt. And so a lot of these kids shouldn't be going into university if they don't have a clear path. I want to attract the kids that maybe have, generational cycles of poverty. How can we empower them and enable them and to have a future in our industry? But our industry has to change. We have to change to make it attractive to them, and we have to work together to give them something better. And we do that together. So we put our brains together. For example, Germany right now is having a program for Institute or Rosenheim University. It's a fairly new program that is tailored specifically for international students. And it's a wood, I believe it's a wood uh, uh, engineering. I don't know the exact name. But basically, I mean, over there, you could go to university for, I think it's like €90 per semester. And the only program that's offered in the United States is through, I believe it's Penn State. But again, unless we have grants, unless we have money, I mean, these kids are going to go into debt. So how can we work together to make sure that maybe from middle school or high school, these kids have the courses, we set the path, so that if they so choose to, they have the option to have a brighter future than they would here. And maybe they come back to the United States when we do good and we genuinely do good. We create that space for them, and it all comes back to you, right? So that's what's next. I think it's just making sure that we remain profitable so that we can do those things that we are passionate about. And I am passionate, as is my family, about helping and inspiring. I have a 10-year-old. My sister has a 15-year-old. And so I want to make sure that these kids can see the opportunity for a brighter future. And so yeah, but we have to remain profitable, right? Otherwise, it's gone.
And I encourage too, because I agree with you that, I have three little girls, and sometimes it's funny. My wife and I, we talk. My wife is from Chile, and in that culture, it's still very much so. Have you gotten an upper tier graduate degree? If you want to have any level of quality of life, you have to get, at least at minimum a master's, if not a PhD, in whatever field you're studying. And it's sad, in one aspect, she's come to America and she's seen that's not the case here, right? That you can get ahead in life without necessarily having those things. But, we have three daughters, and I'm of the mindset that I just want them to love what they do and to be really passionate about it, because through owning a business that, yeah, I have several different degrees, et cetera, but it's really, hey, if they wanted to do something, but they're incredibly passionate about it, they're going to make more money doing that, and they're going to be more successful in their career doing that if they really hone in on the one thing that they do really, really, really well. And sometimes that is trades. Sometimes that is a particular subset of a service or whatever the case is, but help people to understand, like, the path isn't always a 4-year degree, right? The path isn't always going and getting this full set of college education. For some, it is. It's a great, wonderful blessing and benefit. But to your point, we need more trades education. We need more programs focused that actually bring, that are positive for the trades overall. I will say, we're both located in Houston, right? That we're both in Texas. And I was at an expo yesterday. We had a booth, and the Houston Community College came up and they mentioned that there's actually an apprenticeship program where the state will reimburse you for having apprentices on staff to cover their wages. And I had not really heard of that before. And so I think to most people, I guess to our listeners, I'm encouraging that look at what your state offers, that not every state is going to be the same, but in government, they are beginning to understand the need for this, and that really the best way for people to have success, or for young people to have success, is really just diving in and getting the experience in an industry. And if you, as a small business owner, are not in a place to where you can create that position for that young person, you don't have the time or the resources, well, the government can help you in that. And so I do encourage, check out with your government that they want to encourage some of these apprenticeship programs. So please, y'all do it. So Julia, tell us more about where our audience can find you, that this was a really great time spent with you, that loved this conversation. Where can our audience find more about you? Where can they find more about Doormasters of Houston?
My goodness. So of course, you can always go to our website, doormastershouston.com. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I encourage you, business owners, to open up your LinkedIn account. You'll see how large your world can get. That's actually how I met you. And we've had amazing conversations, and you'll see a lot of, I'll write a lot of my thoughts there, and we can connect through there. I might be starting a podcast on my own soon. It's actually going to be in Spanish, so that it's geared towards small business owners who need those resources, and hopefully making those connections. And so yeah, I think you can find us on LinkedIn and our website, and we'll be doing a few other things soon. I just need to make sure that I keep on going so that I can do more of these things that I really like. But before we close, I wanted to just you said something that really caught my attention, and so the news of this program with HTC is that this is completely new to me right now, and so to empower the next generations, we have to brainstorm together. Say, oh, look, I heard about this thing and that other. But it starts with making the time, and it's an investment in our time, and sitting down at the table, maybe having some coffee, and just saying, hey, I really want to help. Who do you know? Going back to the collaboration thing, right? So that's how we do it. We do it together.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that. If you want to get ahead in business, you've got to make some time to go have a coffee with people either in your industry or that are advising your industry in one way or the other. You're not going to be able to do it on your own, and everybody's going to have unique perspectives and ideas. And the best thing you can get is some ideas that you can then go execute on. So thank you for that closing there. And Yeah, to our audience, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite platform. We're on YouTube and every major podcast distribution platform out there, Spotify, etc. And if you leave the comment cabinetry, again, cabinetry below in your YouTube and wherever you're listening, you could win a Brady CFO mug. Perfect for brewing up your mornings with us. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Julia, for joining us today. This was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome.